The sound of a plate shattering echoed through the dining room. Everyone turned to look at my wife. She immediately bent down, apologizing over and over while trying to pick up the broken pieces with her bare hands. Before I could reach her, my aunt laughed. My older brother smirked. Then my father pushed another stack of dirty dishes toward her and said, "Since you're already cleaning, you might as well wash the rest." Nobody at that table saw my wife as family. To them, she was free labor. The woman I loved had cooked the meal, served every guest, cleaned every room, and somehow they still treated her as if she should be grateful just to be allowed inside the house. She never complained. She simply smiled through the humiliation. I wanted to defend her, but before I could say a word, the family lawyer walked through the front door holding a sealed envelope. He looked around the room before asking one question. "Where is Mrs. Abani Chakir? This letter belongs to her alone." Within minutes, everything my family believed about my wife would collapse. My name is Obiora Namo. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a mechanical engineer in Harare. My wife, Abani Chakir, is a high school literature teacher with the gentlest heart I've ever known. She believes respect should be earned through kindness, not demanded through power. Sadly, my family saw her kindness as weakness. Because she came from a modest background, they expected her to cook, clean, serve guests, and stay silent while everyone else enjoyed themselves. For 4 years, she endured every insult with quiet dignity. Neither of us imagined that one unexpected letter would change our lives forever. From the very first day Abani became my wife, my family decided she would never truly be one of them. They welcomed her with polite smiles in front of guests, but behind closed doors, they treated her as if she had been hired to work in the house instead of becoming part of the family. Every holiday, birthday, and family gathering followed the same painful routine. Before the sun even came up, Abani was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast, cutting vegetables, stirring pots, baking bread, and making sure every meal was perfect. While everyone else sat together laughing, talking, and enjoying themselves, she moved quietly from one room to another carrying heavy trays, serving drinks, and making sure no one's plate was empty. Even after everyone finished eating, her work was far from over. She collected every dirty plate, washed every dish, wiped every table, swept every floor, and cleaned every corner of the house, while the rest of the family relaxed comfortably. What hurt me the most was that no one ever thanked her. Not once. If the food tasted delicious, they praised the recipe instead of the woman who had spent hours cooking it. If the house looked spotless, they acted as if it had cleaned itself. But the moment something small went wrong, everything changed. If a glass had a tiny fingerprint, if the soup was slightly warmer than expected, or if one spoon was missing from the table, the criticism began immediately. My aunt would shake her head with disappointment. My older brother would make sarcastic jokes that made everyone laugh except Abani. My father would remind her that she still had a lot to learn if she wanted to earn the family's respect. Every careless word cut a little deeper, yet Abani never argued back. She simply smiled softly, apologized even when she had done nothing wrong, and continued working as though her own feelings did not matter. Watching the woman I loved give everything she had while receiving nothing but silence and criticism filled my heart with anger. But I never imagined that one day the same family who ignored her sacrifices would be forced to see the incredible woman they had been overlooking all along. Late that evening, after the last guest had finally gone home and the house had become quiet, I noticed Abani was nowhere to be found. I checked the living room, the backyard, and our bedroom, but she wasn't there. Then I saw a faint light coming from the kitchen. As I walked closer, I found her standing alone at the sink, slowly washing the last few dishes. Her shoulders were trembling, and when she turned slightly, I saw tears quietly running down her face. She quickly wiped them away and forced a small smile, pretending everything was fine. But this time, I couldn't pretend not to notice. I gently took the plate from her hands and asked, "How much longer are you going to carry all this pain by yourself?" For a few moments, she stayed silent. Then the tears she had been holding back finally began to fall. In a soft voice, she admitted that the words my family spoke to her hurt more than she ever allowed anyone to see. Every insult, every unfair comment, and every moment of being treated like she didn't belong stayed with her long after everyone else had forgotten. Yet, she never answered back because she was afraid that if she defended herself, it would create a fight between me and my family. The last thing she wanted was to be the reason I lost the people I had loved all my life. She looked into my eyes and quietly said, "I keep hoping that one day they will stop looking at where I came from and start seeing who I really am. Maybe if I keep showing them kindness, they will understand that my heart is worth more than my background." Those simple words broke something inside me. She wasn't asking for gifts, money, or even praise. All she wanted was a little respect and to be accepted as family. At that moment, I felt two emotions fighting inside me. I was filled with admiration because my wife had a strength and kindness that few people could ever have. But I also felt overwhelming guilt. While she had been protecting my relationship with my family, I had failed to protect her from them. Looking at the tears in her eyes, I silently promised myself that one day things would change, even though neither of us knew that the biggest change was much closer than we could ever imagine. A few weeks later, my father's birthday celebration brought the whole family together once again. Just like every other gathering, Abani had been awake since early morning preparing the food, decorating the dining room, and making sure every guest felt welcome. By the time everyone arrived, she had already spent hours working while the rest of the family enjoyed themselves. As always, no one noticed how tired she looked. They simply expected her to keep serving with a smile. The dining room was filled with laughter, loud conversations, and the sound of glasses clinking together. My father proudly sat at the head of the table while everyone congratulated him. Abani quietly moved from one guest to another, refilling drinks and collecting empty plates. It was as if she had become invisible. Then, without warning, the doorbell rang. The room grew quiet for a moment as I walked to answer it. Standing outside was a well-dressed man carrying a black leather briefcase. His calm expression and professional appearance immediately caught everyone's attention. He introduced himself as Mandla Osei, a respected attorney. In his hand was a large sealed envelope with an official stamp across the front. He politely stepped inside and looked around the room before asking one simple question. "Is Mrs. Abani Chakir here?" Every eye in the house turned toward my wife. She looked completely confused and slowly stepped forward, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. Before she could even speak, whispers spread across the room. My aunt frowned and crossed her arms. My older brother smirked as if he had already decided what the envelope contained. Someone quietly joked that perhaps Abani had forgotten to pay an old debt. Another relative guessed she was being sued. Within seconds, everyone had created their own story, and none of them believed it could be good news. Abani nervously looked at me, clearly frightened by everyone's reactions. She whispered that she had never met the lawyer before and had no idea why he was looking for her. Mandla remained calm. Holding the envelope carefully, he said that its contents were extremely important. Then he looked around the room and spoke in a firm voice. "I must ask that every member of this family remain here. This letter was meant to be opened in front of all of you." The laughter disappeared instantly. A heavy silence filled the room as every heart waited to discover the truth hidden inside that single envelope. With every pair of eyes fixed on him, Attorney Mandla carefully broke the seal on the envelope. The room was so quiet that no one even dared to whisper. My wife stood beside me with trembling hands, completely confused about what was happening. She kept saying there had to be some mistake because she didn't know anyone who would send her such an important letter. Mandla unfolded several legal documents, then gently lifted a handwritten letter from the top of the stack. In a calm voice, he began to read. The letter was written by a woman named Mama Ifunanyais. The moment Abani heard the name, her eyes widened with surprise. Tears immediately filled them. I recognized the name because Abani had mentioned her a few times before. Mama Ifunanya was an elderly widow living in a local retirement home where Abani volunteered every weekend. While most people spent their free time resting or shopping, my wife quietly visited lonely elderly residents, reading books to them, helping them write letters, sharing meals, and simply keeping them company. She never told anyone because she believed kindness didn't need applause. The letter explained that Mama Ifunanya had no surviving children and no close relatives who truly cared for her. Many people had forgotten about her, but Abani never did. Even on busy days, she always found time to visit. She celebrated birthdays that others ignored, listened to stories no one else wanted to hear, and treated the elderly woman with the same love and respect she would have given her own mother. According to the letter, those simple acts of kindness had brought light into the final years of her life. Then Manla read the words that changed everything. Mama Iphigenia wrote that family is not created by blood alone. True family is built by compassion, loyalty, and love shown without expecting anything in return. Because Abeni had cared for her with a sincere heart, she had legally chosen her as the sole beneficiary of her entire estate before peacefully passing away. The room became completely silent. No one could believe what they had just heard. The same woman they had treated like a servant had never been chasing money or status. She had simply been giving kindness to people who needed it most. And now, that kindness had returned in a way no one at that table could have ever imagined. The silence in the room grew heavier with every passing second. No one spoke. No one even moved. Attorney Manla carefully placed the handwritten letter on the table before opening the remaining legal documents. His voice stayed calm and professional as he explained that Mama Iphigenia had made every arrangement through the proper legal process long before her passing. There was no mistake, no confusion, and no one else had a claim. Everything had already been verified. He then began listing what Abeni had inherited. The estate included several fully rented apartment buildings that provided a steady monthly income. There was valuable farmland that had been cared for many years, successful long-term investments, savings accounts, and other financial assets worth more money than anyone in the room could imagine. Manla explained that the inheritance was large enough to provide security not only for Abeni and me, but for future generations as well. She would never have to worry about money again. I slowly looked around the dining room. Just minutes earlier, those same relatives had been treating my wife as if she were nothing more than unpaid help. They had watched her carry heavy serving trays, clear away dirty dishes, and clean up after everyone without offering even a simple thank you. My father had expected her to keep working while everyone else enjoyed the celebration. My aunt had criticized everything she did. My older brother had laughed at her in front of everyone. Now, not one of them could find a single word to say. Their faces told the whole story. The smiles had disappeared. The confidence they once carried was gone. Some stared down at the floor in embarrassment, while others looked at Abeni with wide eyes, as if they were seeing her for the very first time. It finally became clear that the woman they had looked down on had never needed their money, their approval, or their pity. The richest person in the room had been quietly serving them dinner all along. Abeni herself looked completely overwhelmed. She wasn't smiling with pride or celebrating her good fortune. Instead, tears filled her eyes as she held Mama Iphigenia's letter close to her heart. I knew those tears were not for the inheritance. They were for the woman who had seen her true worth when so many others had refused to. And in that unforgettable moment, my family was forced to face a painful truth. They had spent years treating a woman of incredible value like she didn't matter at all. The change happened so quickly that it almost didn't feel real. Only a few days after the inheritance became known, our phones started ringing from morning until late at night. Relatives who had ignored Abeni for years suddenly wanted to hear her voice. People who had never asked how she was doing now called just to check on her. Every conversation sounded unusually sweet. Every message was filled with compliments. It was the same family that had once made her feel invisible, but now they spoke to her as if she had always been the most important person in their lives. Then the invitations began arriving. One family member invited us to dinner. Another wanted us to spend the weekend together. An aunt who had rarely smiled at Abeni suddenly insisted she was her favorite daughter-in-law. My older brother even suggested we should start having regular family meetings because, according to him, family should always stay close. Listening to him say those words was almost unbelievable. Just weeks earlier, he could barely speak to Abeni without making a sarcastic comment. The surprises didn't stop there. Expensive gift baskets appeared at our front door. Fresh flowers arrived with handwritten notes praising Abeni's kindness and generosity. Boxes of chocolates, fruit baskets, and carefully wrapped presents kept showing up one after another. Some relatives even apologized for small misunderstandings from the past, pretending they had never truly treated her badly. It was obvious they wanted to erase years of painful memories with a few kind words and expensive gifts. Ebony accepted every gift politely and thanked everyone with the same gentle smile she had always worn. She never raised her voice or reminded anyone how they had treated her before. That was simply the kind of person she was. But after each phone call ended, she would quietly look at me with sadness in her eyes. She didn't need to say anything because I already understood what she was thinking. One evening she softly said, "If this letter had never arrived, do you think any of them would be calling me today?" I couldn't answer because deep inside, I already knew the truth. Ebony quickly realized that their sudden kindness wasn't coming from love or respect. It was coming from the hope that one day she might share her wealth with them. The smiles were brighter, the words were sweeter, but the hearts behind them had not changed. And for the first time, she clearly saw that some people only recognize your value when they believe they can benefit from it. As the weeks passed, everyone waited to see what Ebony would do with the inheritance. Some relatives were convinced she would buy a huge mansion. Others whispered that she would drive a luxury car, travel around the world, or wear expensive jewelry to show everyone how much her life had changed. Many people assumed that money would change her the same way it changes so many others. They believed the quiet, humble woman they had known would soon become someone completely different. Then one afternoon, Ebony invited our family, close friends, and several members of the local community to a small gathering. Everyone expected her to make a grand announcement about her new lifestyle. The room was filled with excitement as people waited to hear how she planned to spend her fortune. When Ebony finally stood up, she smiled warmly and thanked everyone for coming. Then she said something that left the entire room speechless. She explained that she had no interest in living a life of luxury. Instead, she wanted to honor the woman who had believed in her when no one else did. She announced that a large part of the inheritance would be used to create a scholarship program for hardworking children from poor families who dreamed of getting an education but could not afford it. She also revealed plans to build a community learning center where children could read books, learn new skills, receive free tutoring, and discover opportunities that many of them had never imagined possible. As she spoke, her voice became emotional. She said that Mama Ifunanya had taught her one lesson she would never forget. True kindness does not end with one person. It grows when it is passed from one heart to another. She wanted every child who entered that learning center to feel seen, valued, and encouraged, just as Mama Ifunanya had made her feel through love and compassion. The room fell silent once again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. People weren't shocked by money. They were amazed by the size of her heart. News of Ebony's decision quickly spread beyond our family. Teachers, neighbors, community leaders, and even strangers began praising her generosity. The woman who had once been treated like she had nothing to offer was now inspiring countless people with a gift far greater than wealth. She had chosen to invest not in luxury, but in hope, proving that the greatest legacy anyone can leave behind is the chance to change someone else's future. After Ebony announced the scholarship program and community learning center, something began to change in my father. At first, he said very little. During family gatherings, he became quieter than usual, often watching Ebony from across the room without speaking. I could tell something was weighing heavily on his heart. He had expected wealth to make her proud or selfish, just as many people had predicted. Instead, she became even more generous, helping children she had never met and honoring the memory of the woman who had shown her kindness. Every good thing Ebony did seemed to remind him of every unfair thing our family had done to her. One evening, just as the sun was setting, there was a knock at our front door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see my father standing there alone. There were no relatives with him, no gifts in his hands, and no special occasion to explain his visit. His face looked tired, and for the first time in many years, I didn't see the confident man who always believed he was right. I saw someone carrying the weight of deep regret. Ebony welcomed him inside with the same respect she had always shown, offering him a seat and a warm cup of tea. She treated him kindly, even though he had given her so many reasons not to. For a few moments, none of us spoke. The silence felt heavy, but it wasn't filled with anger. It was filled with emotions that had been waiting for years to come out. Finally, my father looked directly at Ebony. His voice was quiet as he admitted that he had judged her from the very beginning because of where she came from instead of the kind of person she truly was. He confessed that he had mistaken kindness for weakness and humility for a lack of value. He told her he had watched her serve the family, forgive every insult, and now use her inheritance to change the lives of children instead of seeking revenge. Only then did he realize how badly he had failed her. He didn't make excuses or blame anyone else. He simply said, "I'm sorry. You deserved love and respect from the first day you entered our family, and I failed to give you either." Tears filled Ebony's eyes, but there was no bitterness in her heart. She accepted his apology with quiet grace, and for the first time in many years, we sat together not as people divided by pride, but as a family finally learning the true meaning of respect. That evening became the most honest conversation we had ever shared, and it marked the beginning of a new chapter in all our lives. After my father's heartfelt apology, something slowly began to change throughout the entire family. It wasn't an overnight miracle, and it didn't happen because of the inheritance. It happened because everyone had finally been forced to look beyond Ebony's background and see the person she had always been. They realized that the kindness they admired now was the same kindness she had shown from the very beginning. The only difference was that they had never cared enough to notice it before. Family gatherings no longer felt tense. For the first time in years, Ebony was invited to sit with everyone instead of spending the entire day in the kitchen. My aunt, who had once found fault with everything she did, now thanked her for every meal she prepared. My older brother stopped making sarcastic jokes and began speaking to her with genuine respect. Even small moments began to change. Someone else volunteered to wash the dishes. Others helped set the table or clean the house after meals. The work was finally shared instead of being placed on one person's shoulders. Still, Ebony remained the same humble woman she had always been. She didn't remind anyone of how badly they had treated her. She didn't embarrass them or demand special treatment. She accepted every sincere effort with kindness, but she also understood something important. Real change isn't proven by one apology or one kind afternoon. It is proven by what people choose to do every single day. During one family dinner, everyone thanked Ebony for everything she had done for the family and the community. She smiled warmly before speaking in her gentle voice. She said she appreciated the changes she had seen, but she hoped they would remember one important lesson. Respect should never depend on a person's money, education, or social status. It should be given because every human being deserves dignity. She reminded them that kindness means very little if it only appears after someone becomes successful. Her words filled the room with thoughtful silence. No one argued because everyone knew she was right. From that day forward, the family made a real effort to treat one another differently. They listened more, judged less, and learned to appreciate people for their character instead of their circumstances. The inheritance may have opened their eyes, but it was Ebony's grace, forgiveness, and unwavering kindness that truly healed the family. Little by little, pride disappeared, and in its place grew something far more valuable: genuine respect that finally became part of everyday life. A person's value is never measured by what they own. It's measured by the kindness they continue showing long after others have failed to appreciate it. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments what true respect means to you. And if you believe kindness is worth more than status or wealth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs this reminder today.